All right, on the recent ASOBO June update interview, there's been a question regarding the flight simulator coming out on the Xbox and Xbox Series X and S, next generation consoles. And there was two main questions. One regarding the frame rate. Frame rate, it's 30, but it depends. It might go up, it might go down, depending where you are in the area, depending on your data caps, internet, because you have to render all that AI from the Azure for that terrain architecture. So there's so many different factors here that's going to play a huge role, mainly your internet and how fast can it download the data to keep that frame rate steady depending on where you are. So people who are looking for some definitive answer that, okay, we know for a fact it's running 60 FPS, no one can guarantee you what frame rate it's going to be. Most likely the frame rate will fluctuate depending on your TV, depending on your internet, depending where you are flying. Is a very populated city, and the Azure and the data center and the internet needs to download that data, so the frame rates will vary. Just like the guy from ASOBO, CEO from ASOBO, Sebastian Vlach, said that. Okay, and there was another question, very important questions regarding the 4K. And this is the important part that I want you guys to understand. And I want you to listen to what he has answered. I've been doing this for a long time now. And I'm very familiar with how resolution works. And I'm also very familiar with how the source resolution being upscaled works with something that's being outputted to 4K. A lot of you guys, and please don't take this the wrong way. Don't get offended so easily. Don't get butthurt so easily. I want you to learn something. Since you guys seem to be smarty-pantsy and you seem to know everything, listen to this. If you don't understand two main factors here, the difference, if you don't understand the difference, listen to me very closely. Hopefully you learn something in your life. If you don't understand the difference between output display resolution and source rendering resolution, then my friend, you're in the wrong business. You shouldn't talk about 4K. You shouldn't go to Digital Foundry. You need to go back to the basics of understanding how upscaling works. Versus listening to this echo chamber of native 4K, like one of those 1930s, kids selling the newspaper, daily news, whatever. That's what you sound like an echo chamber, repeating just what someone says without having any basic knowledge on how something works. And it agitates me that you guys don't have any basic knowledge of how something works. And it's hard for me to communicate with you if you don't understand the difference between source rendering resolution and output resolution. Series S, it's running in 4K as well. It's running in 4K as well because it has to output to that resolution. But it's not a native 4K resolution. It's a 1080p rendered resolution that's upscaled to 4K. Do you understand that? Your device will have to output to 4K monitor because it's a 4K monitor. But it doesn't mean that your source material it's going to be running it in natively 8.3 million pixels. No one here did anyone ever say it's running natively at 4K or it's running natively at 2160p. The word native 4K, it's what I'm looking for from these guys. And neither one of them did it ever say it's running native 4K. They just said it's 4K, but he noticed on his monitor that he got downscaled to 1400p. And he also says that all of your trees and buildings will be upscaled. They're not going to be running natively. Your cockpit refresh rate, it's not going to be running natively at that 4K resolution. It's going to be upscaled. Certain elements, the grass, the trees, the handcrafted terrain, it's going to be upscaled to a certain fluctuating resolution. You guys need to have better knowledge and better understanding about this. I do. I don't need anybody to educate me. I'm just telling you what the guy says. Now, I don't work for the ASOBO. I don't have the software to look at the scaling resolution like Digital Foundry has. I don't have that equipment, okay? But I'm just going based on what these guys are saying. And nowhere did any of them say confidentally, with huge confidence, none of these three guys ever said with huge confidence, oh, it's running across the board native 2160p at 30 FPS or above. If they had said that, it's running natively 2160p locked at 30 and above, depending on where you are. If they had said that, then fine. Then you can say, hey, we got a native 4K Microsoft Flight Simulator. The word you have to look for, it's native. I don't care when they say 4K. 4K doesn't tell me anything. All it tells me that it's going to, support the output resolution to 4K. But how we get to that resolution, we don't know which method they're using. Are they using a native rendering or are they using a upscaling rendering? And they kind of dodged that question. They didn't say it with a huge confidence. Oh shit, it's running natively across the board. If it's running natively across the board, then make a statement, ASOBO. Make a statement and say, we got some great news for the Series X on this powerful console. It's running natively across the board at 2160p. Nowhere did they say that. Nor do they dare say that. Because they know that's BS. Even the powerful computers are having a difficult time on a PC rendering natively to reach 50, let alone 60 FPS. So you can't expect Series X to make that kind of a magic. It's not going to be native. It's going to be some sort of a dynamic resolution that's fluctuating and it's being upscaled between, like I showed you, 1400p, 1500p, 1600p, depending where you are on the planet, depending where you are. If it's a heavily rendered city, it might drop down to 1500 or 1400, meaning that the dynamic resolution is going to fluctuate. The scaling resolution is going to fluctuate. Yes, I know it's going to say 4K. When you watch a 4K UHD Blu-ray movie, it says 4K. But is it truly a native 4K? It's not. It's a 2K intermediate, upscaled to 4K. I mean, why is this so hard for people to understand? You would think from 2016, having PlayStation 4 Pro and Scorpio, that by now people would understand the principle of checkerboarding, the principle of dynamic resolution, and how it works. When they say native 4K, then you can make a comment and then you can tell me it's running in native 4K. Until that day, it's not native 4K. And if it is native 4K, if Digital Foundry finds out that it's running at natively 2160p, okay, that's great. That's awesome. I'm not going to complain about it. This is not about me being right. This is about me telling you what these guys are saying. And they never, with confidence, ever said it's running in a native 4K. Where's the word native? Not once did I hear them say, ooh, with a huge confidence, native across the board. So let's listen to what they said. And I have to talk like this because I need you guys to understand the basics of how something works. I know you guys are Xbox fans and you want your console to be the greatest console of all time. I'm sorry, cousin, it's not going to happen. There's no such thing as the greatest console of all time. There's no such thing. Definitely not for $500. To be running such a demanding game like this at native 4K. Then why the fuck, excuse my language, why the fuck would anybody bother building a PC? $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 fucking dollars PC. If they can get a console that's going to run it natively. Come on, guys. Get your head out of your ass. Let's be real. Let's stop stroking each other with this fanboyism, hoping for some greatness. Let's be real. Let's be fucking real. That's why I'm agitated. Because you guys are not being real. I'm being real. You guys are not being real. You guys have this false hope that your console is going to be rendering this at native 4K. And it's not going to happen. But let's listen to what the guy says, and we'll go through it again.
Xbox 4K native or upscaled?
So 4K is only for X. Okay. If you run on S, it's 1080p, and 4K is then for if you run on X, you get 4K. What I found is that it's rendered in 4K, and for example, I don't have a 4K monitor, and so it's downscaled actually from 4K to I think I have a 1400p or something a monitor, and we can't really change the resolution, so it's hard coded 1080p on S and 4K on X, and in the rendering pipeline. Many of the effects are actually upscaled, so clouds that's on every.
Many are upscaled, like the clouds and the trees and other things are upscaled to 4K. So where did he say with a confidence that it's being rendered in native 4K? Where did he say? He just says it's outputting to 4K, just like any device, just like your Series S. It's outputting to 4K, but in the truth, the game's not going to be rendering at 4K. Forza Horizon, it's outputting 4K, but it's upscaled to reach that 8.3 million pixels. Why is this so hard for people to understand? Now, he said he has a monitor, a 1440p monitor, so it's downscaled to 1440p. But nowhere with confidence can he tell you that it's going to be native 4K. He says 4K, just like they said on the Spider-Man, it's going to be 4K. But the Spider-Man never ran at native 4K. It ran 1440p, upscaled to 4K. Series S, it's 1080p rendered resolution, upscaled to 4K. So guys, where did he say with a confidence, oh, it's running in native 4K, 2160p natively across the board? I have never heard him say that. Now, the 4K doesn't tell me anything. 4K could mean so many things. It could mean dynamic resolution of 1400p, 1500p, 1600p. And he even said here that the clouds are being upscaled. Everything's being upscaled. So you're not going to have that refresh rate on the cockpit running at native 2160p. You're not going to have your instruments being rendered at 2160p inside the cockpit. You're not going to have your reflection rendered natively at 2160p. It's going to be fluctuating that resolution. Call it checkerboarding, call it upscaled, call it dynamic resolution. It all works on the same principle. But nowhere that the guy says, hey, it's across the board being rendered in native 4K. I can show you the video on my PC. Everything being rendered in native 4K. And you're going to see what kind of frame rates I'm going to get. Lousy 23, 24, maybe 25. 25 frames per second with the ultra settings. Maybe I get 26 to 27 frames. Are you going to tell me that the Xbox Series X can do that? If Xbox Series X can render this game at native 4K, I'm never going to touch my PC, Flight Simulator. I promise you. You're never going to see me touch my PC. But I know that's not going to happen. It's just not technically possible. That's why I'm so agitated. And you guys just have this false hope thinking that it's going to be possible. It's not going to happen, cousin. It's not going to happen. This is a very different type of a beast. It's not Forza Horizon. It's not like Halo. It's a total different beast. Very difficult beast to render. Even with a 3090, people are having difficult time keeping that steady 60 FPS with the ultra settings. 3090 for crying out loud. So that's what I'm trying to say here. So where exactly did he say in running in 84K? He clearly mentioned that the cloud's going to be upscaled. Cloud's going to be upscaled. Excuse me, I just burped. Cloud's going to be upscaled with everything else. Where did he say native? The 4K doesn't mean anything. And he tested it on a 1440p monitor. The dude, why you... I mean, come on, ASOBO. It's embarrassing. You're testing it on a 1440p monitor? Come on, dude. Do you want me to ship you a 4K monitor? Like this guy, Sebastian Vlog? Do you want me to send you a 4K monitor, dude? That's embarrassing. You're ASOBO, Microsoft. You can't afford a 4K monitor, dude? You can't go to Amazon and order yourself a 4K monitor? I don't mean to jump on the guy, but seriously, it's embarrassing that you can't afford a 4K monitor, dude. Especially when you are working and testing a Series X version. I don't get that. Why are you testing in a 1440p? Of course, it's going to be downgraded to 1440p and downscaled to 1440p because you're testing in a 1440p monitor. So it doesn't say anything to me here that it's running native 4K. Where, you tell me, where did this guy say native 4K? No, really, you tell me. I hope I'm wrong. This is not about me being right. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's native 4K because I want to enjoy this game in native 4K. Nobody wants native 4K being rendered more than me, more than this guy with a beautiful Dolby Vision. I want it more than anybody. This is not about me being right. This is not about me being wrong. This is about being real. And you guys are not being real. All you Xbox fans, and I love you, but you're not being real. You got to be realistic about this, man. Like I said, people with 3090 Ti, 64 gigs of RAM, i9 processor, 18 cores, are having difficult time, super difficult time, rendering this game to keep that steady 60 FPS in native 4K with ultra settings. They don't even hit 60. They hit 52, 53. They can't even keep a steady 60 FPS. But you're going to try to convince me that the Series X going to be able to do that. Come on, guys. I hope I'm wrong. This is not about me being right. But let's be real. Let's listen to it again.
I see some comments about TVs being at 60 Hz. So I don't know for US because you've got something like 25 and 50 Hz. In Europe, it's 30 and 60 Hz. So that's why we are using that as a reference.
Okay. Is Xbox 4K native or upscaled?
So 4K is only for X.
Okay.
If you run on S, it's 1080p, and 4K is then for if you run on X, you get 4K.
He never answered the question. He's dodging the question. The question was, is it native or upscaled? The guy didn't answer the question. He dodged the question. Where did he say in confidence that it's running in native? If somebody asked me this question, is it running in native 4K or upscaled? I would have said with easy confidence, hey, yep, across the board, 2160p natively at 30 FPS and above. But he dodged the question. He starts saying, oh, I didn't even have the 4K monitor. I was downscaled on a 1440p monitor. And then he says the clouds are rendered and upscaled, so it really depends. It will be upscaled, and certain elements like cloud and the trees and terrain will be upscaled. So the guy was dodging the question. He never gave a confident. Even this guy, head of the Microsoft Flight Sim, didn't jump in to weigh in. None of these guys jumped in to weigh in to say, oh yeah, across the board, native 4K. And the question was, is it native 4K or is it upscaled? And it's not native 4K, because if it was native 4K, all three of them would have easily jump in and say, yeah, man, this is across the board native 4K. So where exactly did they say with confidence? He says it's 4K, but what does that mean? What does that mean? Is it natively 4K or is it checkerboard 4K? Is it natively 4K or is it rendered with some dynamic resolution to fill in that 8.3 million pixels? They didn't give us any concrete evidence, proof where I can go and with confidence say, hey guys, it's a native 4K. Nowhere did they answer that. But let's listen to it again. Here.
Friends.
Okay. Is Xbox 4K native or upscaled?
So so 4K is only for X.
Okay.
If you run on S, it's 1080p, and 4K is then for if you run on X, you get 4K. What I found is that it's rendered in 4K, and for example, I don't have a 4K monitor, and so it's downscaled actually from 4K to I think I have a 1400p or something a monitor. And we can't really change the resolution, so it's hard coded 1080p on S and 4K on X, and in the rendering pipeline, many of the effects are actually upscaled, so clouds
in the rendering pipeline. Listen to the words. And did you see how quiet everybody got? Nobody wanted to jump in and weigh in when asked, is it natively or upscaled? They all kind of got quiet. No one, like, with confidence said, oh, it's running in a native 4K. Or it's being upscaled. They all just kind of start jumping and dodging the question and, walking on an eggshells. And then he says, rendering pipeline of the clouds and terrain, it's always going to be upscaled. So it's not rendered in native. It's outputting 4K, just like any 4K device would output 4K. But is it running it at natively? Is it rendering it at natively resolution? No. So that's my whole point here that I want you guys to understand. And the whole point of those videos that I was doing, it's not going to be rendering the clouds. It's not going to be rendering the terrain. It's not going to be rendering your cockpit at native 4K resolution. It most likely is going to be some checkerboard dynamic resolution. We'll find out from Digital Foundry. Is it scaling from 1400 to 1500 to 1600? If it's locked at 1600p, that's pretty darn good. That's pretty darn good. If it's locked in, let's say 2680 by 1600, that's pretty good, man. That's a pretty good resolution to reach that 4K. It's going to look very sharp. Not as sharp as running it natively. It's not going to look crystal clear sharp, but it's going to look sharper than the Series S version. So what I'm trying to say in this video is this, guys. Don't come to me giving me this concrete proof that you know for a fact that it's running in native 4K. Nobody knows. We'll have to wait till July 27th, and we'll have to wait till Digital Foundry gets the copy, and then we'll find out from Digital Foundry where we at. Right now, everybody's just stroking each other. Everybody's just like, throwing rocks left and right. Nobody knows. Even they cannot give you the concrete answer. They all got choked up and they got quiet when asked about, is it native or is it upscaled? But none of them gave you a concrete proof and says, oh yeah, across the board. I tested on my OLED 4K. It's running natively across the board. And then he jumped into saying, I'm using a 1400p monitor. And then he says, the rendering pipeline is going to be upscaled. What does that mean? That means that it's 4K output resolution, but it's using a checkerboard and upscaling rendering techniques to reach that 8.3 million pixels. While the Series S is strictly 1080p source. That's also upscaled through your television to 4K. You know. And please, guys, don't try to educate me about this. I've been doing this since 2016. I live and breathe resolutions. I live and breathe televisions. Okay, I don't need to be educated on this. You can educate yourself. You can learn the difference between the output resolution and the source resolution of that program or software or the material that you were watching. I know the difference between output and I know the difference between the source that's rendering whatever resolution it's rendering and then trying to fill in and upscale that 8.3 million pixels. Don't educate me, please. Educate yourself. All right? Because I will not reply to your comments. You trying to like school me or educate me. You school yourself. You educate yourself, brother. Okay, I've been doing this for a long time. I live and breathe 4K. Even my name, it's Mr. 4K Upscaler. Okay? I want you to understand the difference between output resolution and a source resolution. And how checkerboarding and how upscaling works. You need to fundamentally learn about this. And you guys go to Digital Foundry and still you guys are having a difficult time understanding the difference. And even though I made a video, I made a live stream where I showed you this. So, they never said native. Okay, we're here. Okay, before I end the video, okay, just tell me. They all got quiet and no one said, oh, it's running in native 4K. Okay, they dodged that question. Here, let's go back. Here. Let's go back over here. Because this is irritating me, man. It really is. All right, here we go.
Is Xbox 4K native or upscaled?
And they all choked up. They all got quiet. No one got excited to say, oh, Eureka, Eureka, Eureka. It's running in native 4K. Or how about at least tell us it's upscaled? So they're not telling us diddly shit. So I don't want you guys running around saying, oh, it's running in native 4K. We're going to have to wait till July 27th, till Digital Foundry uses their equipment and their scaling instruments and softwares, so that way we can see what scaling resolution we're at. And I can guarantee you, it's not going to be a native 4K. It might be 1600p, but that's pretty darn good. If it's 1600p, you should be jumping in joy. You should be happy. You should be celebrating if it's a 2600 by 1600. You should be celebrating. But right now, we don't know. That's why I made this video, because it's driving me crazy on the comment sections. I know it's a long video, but it has to be long. This has to be said. Okay? Let's wait till July 27th, and then we'll know what we'll know. Right now, you don't know. You don't have any proof that it's running in 84K. Nobody knows. And that's where I'm going to end it with. All right, guys. Catch you later. Take care.